Ladies and gentlewomen, welcome to Peak Lesbian. This is my first full episode of the podcast. Today you're going to be hearing an interview I did with Gaye Chapman. Gaye is the owner of AfterEllen. She will soon not be the owner anymore. She is selling it. We'll get into that in the interview. I'm very pleased that Gaye agreed to give me an interview. She doesn't give a whole lot of interviews, and I appreciate her having a wonderful conversation with me. I enjoyed it immensely. She's been a vocal advocate for some years now, both online, social media, with the magazine AfterEllen. Also, she lives in LA. She has gone to events in LA and demonstrations in LA to, voice her belief that men, no matter how they identify, do not belong in women's spaces, do not belong in lesbian spaces. She's been a very staunch advocate for lesbian only spaces and women only spaces. So I hope you enjoy the interview. And remember, wherever you go, spread lesbian joy. Let's start out by, how about you do an introduction? Let's do that.
Well, there's the personal and then there's the professional.
Well, I like to do a little professional and a little personal. It just depends how much you want to go into it.
I live in LA and I work for the city of Los Angeles in Bureau of Contract Administration and Public Works. I'm a senior electrical inspector. For all you haters out there, have at it.
Is there hate for your profession? What's this?
Oh, but there's hate for me.
Oh, well, there's hate for all of us.
They want to, venture over and make complaints. Go for it.
Oh, that's right. You have had some TRAs come after you, right? Yeah, I forgot about that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I'm pretty careful to express my political and personal opinions on my own space and my own time. And when I'm on city time, I am comporting myself like a professional employee should. There you have it.
I first met you on X.
Yeah.
X, or Twitter. Twitter as it was. Way back in the day.
I still call it Twitter.
I know. I still do too. So first ran across you on Twitter. It was only just a few months when I got my Twitter account and was kind of being somewhat, I wasn't public. I didn't have my public face out there, but I was on there talking about detransition as a lesbian. And I remember seeing you pop up and seeing you demonstrating down in LA with your signs and your flags and everything. And I just thought, I don't know, you inspired me. I was like, that is so cool. Here's a butch lesbian out there going, no, I don't put up with this shit, And I reached out to you and I was like, hey, I want to do some activism. But I think maybe you sensed I was a little too early out the gate to be getting into that. But you invited me to a private chat. And I have to say that was an extremely helpful thing for me in that point in my life, because I got to be in a space where there was so many other lesbians of so many different backgrounds and ages. And I learned so much from you guys. And so thank you for that.
Yeah, that little Twitter chat's very long running. It's still going.
Oh, is it? Yeah, it was very helpful at the time. But so your activism, so when did you get into doing that activism, and kind of what did it entail?
Well, the first thing was kind of by accident. I think it was the re-spa, that big protest, which a lot of us thought was some kind of made up thing by trans activists. And it turns out that somebody actually did organize a protest and the trans activists jumped all over it. But I had not planned on going and demonstrating. Mm-hmm. I took a t-shirt and I thought, well, what the heck? If there's a bunch of people there, I'll throw on this witch won't burn t-shirt. So, and I was gonna meet a couple of women and we were just gonna go observe and check it out. So early on, I was just like walking through the crowds, just observing. And it was quite a show. And one of the women I met was Amy Ichikawa, and she had on a Posey Parker definition of woman t-shirt. And I said, oh, you're crazy wearing that here. You're gonna get us all killed. So I said, all right, let me go get my t-shirt. So I put on this Which Won't Burn t-shirt. So there's the two of us. We took a bunch of pictures, and I mean, we'd seen enough. We chatted up a little bit, but we were like kind of about ready to leave there. And I could hear someone on the megaphone saying, and those bigots or turfs over there. And around the corner comes this whole mob
Oh,
at us. That was like, oh shit. And they surrounded us and proceeded to harass us, dump water on us, shove, knock the phone out of my hand. I mean, everything. And we got out of there unscathed, but I mean, it's kind of traumatic when people are bopping you with signs and screaming in your face about your hateful turfs. Just got a t-shirt on. I hadn't said anything. I didn't have any signs or anything, but they wanted to target, and
hmm
there we were. So that was like, it was inadvertent, but that got a lot of attention. So in Melissa Cohen, who I didn't know at the time, slipped me a piece of paper with her name and email and maybe a phone number, and I reached out to her. So then came on my radar screen that things were happening. We're going to go, a group's going to protest at the children's hospital. Group's going to be out at the pediatric convention in San Diego. So like I pretty much just show up and hold a sign. I'm
Yeah.
not I'm not an organizer. I mean, I praise and honor to the people who do, because it does take time and energy, and there is an element of the unknown, is element of some kind of risk involved, because there's a lot of crazies out there.
Yeah.
A lot of crazies without holding up a sign with your opinion on it,
Yeah. But
right?
even before that, like, weren't you doing like this, like some signs and flags and stuff, like you'd stand out, like, was
I,
it
I
Pride
went to
Parade?
the 2018 LA Pride Parade with my lesbian flag is all painted up,
hmm
and it says right on it, don't believe the hype. Transactivism is misogyny. I can't imagine what I was thinking going alone. But
Yeah.
I did. It had a bunch of balloons, helium balloons tied on it. It would pretty much float on its own.
And what made you do that? What made you decide to do that?
I was just getting stirred up from, it came on my awareness of what was happening with transactivism, and that really wasn't much of a lesbian community anymore that I could reach out to and find. I mean, yes, you can have a lot of friend groups and stuff, but I just hit me that things had changed so drastically. And I thought, well, I'm going to go out there and do my thing. And I remember watching that parade, and I'm see the Grand Marshal was a trans identified male, all the big major entries, trans. And I turned, and it was mostly men too. And I turned to one of the women watching, and I said, where's all the lesbians? And she goes, I know. She knew.
Yeah.
We're non-existent, or mostly non-existent.
What you realized, when did, like, what spurred you to realize this? What happened that?
Well, I came out in my early 20s, and it was in the mid 70s. And right about at the same time, I worked in an anthropological library, and I thought it would be a good idea for me to go into one of the building trades. So I became an electrician apprentice in the IBEW, and that's how my whole career in the electrical field got launched. So I was working in construction in Arizona. And it takes a lot out of you. And then I had classes at night. And that pattern continued even when I moved to Los Angeles as a journeyman. I would take classes at night. I would work all day, take classes at night, trying to better myself, which I did. And so I kind of slipped out of going out to bars regularly.
Mhm.
I didn't have really a lesbian friend group here in LA. I met my wife early on and we paired up. And so we had a household together. So, I mean, we were a couple. And as it turned out, I just kind of slipped away from community stuff. So I really didn't hit me that men were invading and that this gender ideology was going to be such a big thing with the non-binaries and the theys and thems. I think that maybe that came a little later on, but
Hmm.
I didn't see it in real life. I was learning about it
Okay.
because back in Arizona, when I was a youngster, and I really was young, I was in my early 20s, most of the lesbians were older than me. Some
Okay.
were considerably older. And I remember being at a party once, and there was a guy there in a dress, and then he went and he was swimming around in the little swimming pool. I'm like, what's with this guy? And like, oh, it's okay, gay. He just wants to be a lesbian, and it's joke time. It's like
Was this a lesbian only party, or was this like,
I would think it was, but somebody invited that schmo.
and this was in the 70s?
Yeah,
God, it's
I'd
like,
say I'd say like maybe around 1977, 78. We also had really, you got to remember, there was no cell phones back then. We had big lesbian events, or let's just say women's community, because it's not just lesbians, it's bi women, and it's also like women who are activists who kind of move through gay and bi circles, but there might be straight women too. There's
mhm,
questioning women, and that's a lot of women.
yeah.
I mean, even back then, we could get a couple hundred women, word of mouth, flyers. They'd have a, a hall in one of the friends' churches or something, and they'd have, and mind you, I'm thinking back now about how it was because I wasn't paying a lot of attention. I was young and I was interested in women, and you know, I wasn't really sure of myself. I was kind of a wallflower, so I'm trying to find my way through. So I wasn't really paying attention to like a lot of peripheral things, like if a man's pretending to be a woman. But they had a couple of big butches on the door. And if there was like a transvestite, and they did apparently, there was transvestites that would try and sneak in. And like if you didn't look like you passed, you were doing the boob check, right?
I've
You
heard
they
that before.
lift your
Yeah.
shirt, boobs. Because nobody had there were first of all, women weren't doing top surgery and
Yeah.
men weren't getting implants either. You had to like kind of prove your credentials there. But I wasn't paying attention to that because I was hot after women. I wanted to, I was shy and I wanted to figure out like dating and the whole ball of wax.
Yeah.
So even
It,
back then, there was always the ones trying to sneak in, but they knew they didn't belong, obviously.
yeah, you're not the only lesbian I've spoken to who's talked about, the 70s and the 80s and having these guys come into lesbian spaces. And it's just like this has always been a problem, but now it's just completely
And
overwhelming.
I
But
think to the women's credit back then, they were just a bunch of creepy schmoes. There wasn't this kind of massive threat to our own community cohesion that they put it. It was just some loon off in a corner somewhere. It's like everybody could just ignore him, right? But it's so, and I hadn't much thought about it, but they were there.
yeah.
I remember seeing some women, and I'm a little butchy, and I'm comfortable around really butch women, much more butch than I am. But I look at a couple and go, God dang, isn't that a guy? Right? Very well may have been. But I mean, I wouldn't just like go up and say, hey, are you a guy? Or,
Yeah, there's this awkwardness to it too, right? And
yeah, because it
politeness.
might be a woman who's super butchy and really self-conscious, and then you're gonna go, I mean, there are some few people that is somewhat indeterminate.
Yeah, I will not claim to always
I
be able to
can
tell.
usually tell if I see the whole person and I look at their body shape and everything. Um, there's a trans-identified male that I work with who's right up in my inspector's unit. And I mean, there's no question.
Yeah. No, it's much harder for them to quote unquote pass than it is for the women, I think. People
Yeah.
are usually, if you grow facial hair, people will usually not question it. Like that just seems to be the case. But that doesn't mean I think most women can still kind of tell. I think women can tell more
Yeah,
than
but
men.
I can usually tell from like facial structure, but again, like the hips don't lie,
That's true.
right? And
That's very true.
most women are hippie enough or curvy enough in their legs and body. Their hands and arms are much more delicate than men's,
Yeah.
right?
Well, tell me a little bit about your coming out story.
Oh, well, as I said, I worked in an anthropological library, and one day two women came up to me with a flyer for a women's party. They invited me to a women's party. So they'd been checking me out and must have thought, well, hey, is she gay? Or she looks like she might be gay, or hmm. So they invited me to a women's party, which like it floored me. But oh my God, all of a sudden I was so interested in going to a women's party. And I did. And there I met lots and lots of women who enjoyed the company of other women. And then, yeah, I mean, and I don't get me wrong, I knew from a very early age that I was same sex attracted way before high school.
Yeah.
And then before then, I knew I was different. I always had crushes on women, girls. I knew I was different.
Were you a tomboy?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Athlete, tomboy. Then I went into construction. But I didn't want to be a lesbian. Lesbian was a dirty word
Oh
when
yeah.
I was young. It's not like something that all these people want to gather up and say, yeah, it's nothing. And I'm that and I'm that. And it's like, you're a little straight girl. What are you talking about? But if you didn't want to be that, it was a horrible thing. It was a pejorative. And I didn't want to be that. And I fought accepting myself as a homosexual person for a very long time. And so that was, I mean, coming out's a whole process. It was like a second coming out to go out into a community and be accepted and find women that like other women and might like you just the way you are.
Hmm.
It's amazing. And most of them were older women. And I had I had my struggles and I acted out here and there when I started, mingling into community. I acted out a little bit, but all the women were older and they were like really generous to me. I think they kind of understood the struggles that a young lesbian would have coming out, and really, for the most part, I was the youngest one.
Hmm.
So most of the women were in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and up.
That makes me think of how important it is to have intergenerational community with
Oh,
lesbians,
it's
right?
it's 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 like nothing else because, and then you realize it's like, and it was super homophobic times, really homophobic. You didn't have workplace protections. Your families might be actively working against you or against you having a relationship with another person. You just had many barriers to cross to just have like a regular life. Lots of women I knew, even really butch women, were closeted. And
Mm.
don't ask me how, but they had to try and pull it off to
Don't
keep,
ask, don't ask, don't tell.
yeah, or don't arouse suspicion, right? Or they would find a profession that they could kind of dress the way they want. I did. This is like a work shirt for me. Like wear jeans and shirts and boots
Hmm.
every day from now till I retire. I knew one woman was a bus driver and she could wear a uniform and wear her hair like back pretty short or and maybe it was in a bun, but it looked kind of severe, right?
That's an interesting perspective because I mean, I've noticed that like butches do tend to gravitate towards jobs that we can be comfortable in, I think, and
Yeah,
where, you know, we don't gotta wear a, well, not anymore. You don't need to wear a skirt and stuff anymore. But back in the day, you had to dress
yeah,
feminine, you know, if you were in office or more profession, you know, office type spaces and stuff like that, you had to
yeah,
be
yeah. That's
dress,
a fact. They did.
shoes, all that nonsense.
Not makeup.
Oh, make, yeah, you'd probably,
Yeah.
ugh,
Ugh.
Jesus.
Yeah, I think witches do tend to gravitate towards where they can feel comfortable.
So you went to this women's party, and did it just kind of kick off from there? Is that, was
Oh
that
yeah.
your in
Oh my
route
God,
to
that was just
women's community?
freaking seventh heaven.
Yeah.
In fact, one of those women became my first lover. And wow, times, times. I ended up I was living in an apartment, but I ended up like sharing a house with a bunch of women a couple of different times. And that has it really was good for me because it challenged me. I had to grow up very fast.
Hmm.
Women were always coming and going, and there was a time when two women wanted to leave and were just giving me like a couple days notice. And I'm like, who's going to pay the rent? I had to learn how to woman up. I mean, I did kind of grow up a little bit.
Hmm. What made you go to LA?
I was looking for work.
Okay.
Work was pretty rough in my home local in Arizona, and work was plentiful in Los Angeles. They were building lots and lots and lots in the mid 80s. So
Yeah,
work was
yeah, they
quite
were.
plentiful. So I got gainful work and stayed employed. And as soon as I could, I moved my union membership over to Local 11 here in Los Angeles.
So
And now
how many years have you been in this trade?
I got a 40-year pin from the IBEW.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
so cool.
I'm retired from the IBEW, and I've actually worked for the city of Los Angeles for 20 years now.
So
So,
cool.
yeah, I've secured a reasonably good life for myself and the fam.
Yeah.
But I've
And
been away from my family too. I don't have any family here in LA.
yeah. And it's such a common story for lesbians to, you know, find a partner, create a family, get work, settle down, and just kind of not be in the community so much
That's
anymore. And
exactly what
then,
happened to me.
yeah, and then something comes up and slaps you in the face,
What
like,
the hell? What the hell?
yeah.
I remember this was a couple of years ago when Kelly J. Keene did the Standing for Women here in LA. LA was actually the kickoff spot. And I didn't know the other people just came up. Some had planned and some kind of knew about it, and some came. And there was a woman, and she said she was not as old as I am, but she was probably in her 40s, I think. And she says, I found out all about all this gender stuff just very recently when I went on a dating app to find a date. And you can imagine.
Oh yes. I have, how old would you say she was?
I think she's probably in her mid 40s.
Yeah. Can you imagine? I mean,
The
I
shock.
I honestly, had I not been in the trans nonsense, I wouldn't have known what was going on either. Because I've been with my wife since I was 21, you know? But because I got in the trans nonsense, I was keyed into that.
Right. I
But
didn't know anything about the trans nonsense.
yeah,
You know, this gender shit, they, them, she, her, what the fuck? I mean, sorry,
no, you can cuss, it's fine. Um,
I had no idea
so
until
did,
I got into social media.
so I always ask older lesbians this just because I'm curious. Um, I first saw trans kind of come into the lesbian community pretty hard at around 99 to 2002.
Oh, that's early.
Did you see any of that?
No, because I was
You just weren't
working,
around. Yeah.
taking
Okay.
classes and going home and grilling steaks on the weekend. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I just there was some lesbian bars in LA, but there was one that like I live in the San Fernando Valley, so for me to take a chance and drive somewhere and drink and then drive all the way, you know, it was there's a risk there that I wasn't willing to take.
And
And
you worked. You're probably tired. It's
I
like,
was. I worked and I went to classes at night. For
yeah,
for years I
for
did
years.
this.
Yeah.
In fact, I took a bunch of classes just a year ago. And I had to take some days off work to do it, but I took a bunch of classes and now I'm a OSHA authorized trainer and it put a bunch more money on my paycheck. So, I mean, and I have a professional meeting on Wednesday that I get continuing education units from because I have his certifications I have to keep up. So I'm always still, people think I'm just noodling around saying tart things on X. All that gets sandwiched in between a real life, a real profession.
You're a busy woman. It sounds like you've been a busy woman for years.
Yeah, well, all that changed as of October of last year when I found the lump in my breast and got diagnosed with breast cancer. So that's been a whole different journey, but that's a whole different topic. But so far, so good. Everything seems to be going along pretty swimmingly.
Good, good to hear.
Yeah.
Um, I want to talk a little bit about your purchase of AfterEllen.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about after.
And we got to touch on it. I mean, that's
Well, it came on the radar. I was in some chats, and Julia Robertson kind of was chatting up with me about AfterEllen might be up for sale. Is anybody interested? And I said, really? Do you know what kind of price they're asking? Because I might be interested. She said, it's kind of a dead website. Women were just posting stories on their own just to keep some content in, which I could use right now. And she said, are you interested? I says, yeah. So I went in partnership with another woman and was able to purchase AfterEllen. And it's been
what made you want to purchase it?
honestly, I'm not a businesswoman, obviously, that shows. And I'm not a writer. I wish I was, but it was an iconic site and I wanted to preserve it more than anything. And it's been quite a wild ride just preserving it because at one point the site crashed and the site was really rickety, hadn't been kept up well. And the archive that's supposed to be backed up was corrupted. So we had a developer rebuilt the site from scratch, but we didn't have the content back. And I said, I got involved with him and my trusty editor, Jocelyn McDonald, who's been a real yeoman for lesbian community, by the way, helped me just start throwing some articles back up and say we're back because the trans activists were hugely celebrating. And I mean, I have never taken any content down from there. And I know some of the writers at AfterEllen went gender bullshitty too.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, and my partner and I wanted to right the ship and make content by and for lesbians and by women, this
Because
community.
were you seeing that so many of the lesbian quote unquote publications were including men?
Yes. Yeah.
That they were all, yeah.
I I can't think of them. Curve, Diva,
Something like that. Yeah.
Autostraddle,
I
Lesbians. I
remember,
think there was one called Lesbians on the Loose. They're all full of men.
yeah, they all started including dudes.
They don't have to be inclusive. And if a writer was gonna like buck buck up against that, they were not going to write for that publication. I know for a fact that's how they can knuckle women under.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, you know what? There's got to be one just for lesbians,
Right?
only for lesbians and not for men. So that was always been my goal. Unfortunately, there's fixed costs involved in running a website, and I paid the writers, and I just couldn't keep up with pouring in new content. And I can't prove it, but I think Google and other people behind the scenes definitely suppressed my income. But even those clicky ads don't pay much at all. You have to
Yeah.
sell direct ads. And I couldn't find the right person to sell advertising that would actually generate some real income.
And then the problem is advertising. If an advertiser comes on there, the TRAs and all that is going to come
Yeah.
down on them. So no one wants to
Yeah.
advertise.
You're in this
Yeah.
bigoted turf website. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So about a year ago, I had to pull the plug on paying the writers. So the site exists, it's not going anywhere. I am working slowly at closing down my business interests and writing a sales contract. I have someone lined up and I think it'll be a good fit. Once it's out of my hands, I can't say for a fact what's going to happen, and I'm just going to brace myself. But I also realize, and this is something that where my age and perspective may be somewhat of a hindrance. There's so many lesbians that identify as non-binary and get top surgeries and this that it's like a theme. And
Yeah.
I don't know how to address that because I don't know. Someone should, but it has to be somebody other than me. But it's and I wish AfterEllen would open up as more of a community site again. I we had the option of putting in a chat module, but I thought I can't moderate that stuff, and it was just going to be
Yeah. You'd
problem.
have to have a moderator of some kind.
You
Yeah.
know, be full of TRAs.
Oh yeah. It's crazy.
It's craziness.
Yeah. I I know you talk about how hard it was, back when you first came out, and in some ways it's better, and in some ways it's worse because it's like women. The hard thing is you can't. It's even hard to get women together secretly because if you get one woman in there who wants to disrupt the whole thing because she is a TRA, even though you may not know it, she's a lesbian, but she's also on board with the trans stuff. She'll tank the whole damn thing. I've seen it happen multiple times on
Oh,
Discords.
well, I think,
Docs other women. So it's
oh,
like there's this whole distrust that's
yeah.
happening among lesbians.
Well, that's where real community, not online community, but real in-person community would help because you got to hold people close. You're going to trust them. You see them, and it's hard to do in a big town, but you get a small group of friends and you say, you may think this or that, you may think this or that, but if you bring a man into our group, you're out. Period T.
Yeah.
That's it. Period T. There are, you can do, this is our community, this is our rules. Everything is word of mouth. Do not give out our phone numbers or emails to anybody else. You start with a tiny group that you know you can trust, right? And say you can
Hmm.
leave the group at any time, but don't take private information with you if you feel like you change your mind or whatever. But when we meet and we have parties, it is women only. And I don't care how a man identifies. If you bring a man, you're out. And then you have kick-ass parties with, you know, then you potlucks. Oh my God, lesbian potlucks. I know them. I know them. Music, food, good talk, a couple of cold beers. Oh my God, I miss those days so much sometimes.
I I've always just kind of stumbled on how you get started though. Like how like you, I don't know. Is it like a cold walk up? Is it because I don't have any friends
Well,
here.
two women cold walked up to me, and that was my introduction to finding my way through like dozens and hundreds of women in local. And then women find each other. They hike together, they camp together. You find women that you like to do things with. I knew women that were really poverty stricken in Tucson. I knew doctors that would treat them off hours and swipe things from their employers to treat poor women with. I knew some really very, very wealthy women I mean, just a huge range. I played softball. Oh man, that's a whole nother saga.
Yeah. I
But I was
honestly
on,
don't think women have that kind of feeling
I,
towards each other too much anymore. I think it's
I
a very
I think
it's hostile.
I think it's hard because first of all, we got these phones in our hands. Then life maybe was a little bit slower pace because you didn't have the instant communication that you have right now.
Yeah.
You could communicate, but somebody'd have to go to a phone or somebody say, I'll let her know, that a lot of it was just not, you didn't, whatever you wanted to do, it didn't happen right that second. Whereas now you can get on the internet and find out what a butterfly's doing in Sri Lanka, right?
Which I totally will do. Um I have gone down many a rabbit hole on YouTube.
Oh, it's so different. I don't think you could not really recreate those spaces
No.
and times.
I guess that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, okay, I get what you're saying, and I think that is somewhat possible, but I think it has to be kind of integrated into how
I
our
think what would be
society works
nice
now.
is if you said we're gonna have a potluck, and it's like bring your phones but keep them in your pocket or something like that because we're all so attached to our phones. But sit down. We're gonna have a potluck. We're gonna have a patio with some dancing out here. We're gonna have seating. Um, please drink responsibly. All that kind of stuff.
Mm.
Ah, Lorraine. Lorraine would drink so much and then she would forget where she parked her car.
Who's Lorraine?
Wander back to the party and sleep it off till the next day.
Lorraine, am I supposed to know who this is, or is this just
It's just the Lorraines of the world.
okay?
She also wore bib overalls with no top underneath. And she played softball. She played in the outfield, of course.
Of course.
We were like quite entertaining.
Yeah.
The whole softball team was lesbians, except one woman who was bi.
Yeah, I looked up a local, like any kind of softball sports, anything that's happened in my area that says it's women or even lesbians or whatever. And the only thing I came across was I think it's like a kickball thing. And it's, LGBT queer women. And I'm like,
Oh, never mind.
which here's the thing, and but they're all that way. So a strategy would be to go and then suss out who might be up for breaking off into another group. That's the
Okay,
only
now
way
here's a suggestion for women finding women. There are women who have vast networks of women. Maybe, and I don't know who they all are, but I knew one that was amazing. Unfortunately, she passed away, but she knew women in every state. She was like an encyclopedia of women and women's land that I had never even heard of. But the lesbian connection, which I think is probably to some extent colonized by men, I think they try to kind of keep that under control.
from what I've seen, yes. From what I've seen, it still seems pretty
Lesbian.
lesbian centric. Yeah.
But if you subscribe to that, and I don't obviously I don't read a whole lot of, but like I looked up a woman in Tucson because periodically I swing through there. Unfortunately, I never have a lot of time there, and I have one friend left from the old days that I usually go visit, my friend Mary Ray. But I called a woman, and she said, "Well, we just all went out to eat the other night." And I know I would have run into some women that I probably remembered me from because I remember this woman's name. And she said they all went hiking today, but I'm too old, so I stayed home. So you can, I'm just using that as a suggestion in your area, maybe find some groups like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the hang up part is finding a way to connect. Like for example, you used to be able to just have a public kind of example. We
Right.
used to have the gay paper, which is all online now, but you used to be able to just advertise in there. Well, there's no way. I mean, you could do that, but you're going to probably get a lot of shit,
I
and they
have
probably wouldn't even publish it, to be honest.
I have known, and I don't know if I would do this alone, but I have known women that went to LGBTQ events and then just exchanged a phone number with a woman or two.
Yeah, I actually know. I think the San Francisco Turf Group did that recently at the
Yeah,
canceled Dyke March. They just went and like handed out cards and was like, "Hey, if you're interested." I
yeah,
mean, I think that's I do think women, if you can, I think we got to get brave and push back. And I think it's hard for us. It's hard for us to do.
it is because we're all, first of all, we're all trying to make a living.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you've noticed, but food prices are absolutely insane.
Insane. Like my income has not changed in years. Years. Yet everything's going up and it is getting tougher every month.
Yeah, my
Crazy.
my kid wants you get Grubhub is free on Amazon Prime. You don't have any delivery charge, but the food prices are like, ah.
I know. I saw a small bag of chips yesterday for 230 something. I'm like, I like rub my eyes. 230 for a small bag of chips. What?
I went to Carl's Jr. I get the kid 3 pieces of chicken, some onion rings, and a milkshake, and I got a double burger, $30.
Dude, I know. Fast food has
30.
really gone up too. I know. So since I have you here, I want to ask your opinion on some Butch stuff. So what what do you think makes a woman a lesbian butch? Like how do you kind of define that?
Wow, that's a tough one.
I know it
I mean, because
is.
you have so many different personalities, right? I mean, I don't think butch. I obviously do not consider it a gender identity.
No, no.
Um, it's an aspect of our personalities that tends to rebel a little bit towards the more feminine aspects that have been traditionally associated with being a woman or a girl, and more towards the adventurous, playful, uh, obviously not conforming to the more feminine type stereotypical dress. I don't know if that makes sense.
Do you think it's innate?
Um, I don't have I hate to say that. I think being a lesbian is not, I don't think being homosexual is not a choice.
Hmm.
I don't believe anybody could ever choose. And if it happens in early childhood, it's formed early enough that nobody could do anything about it anyway. How does
Hmm.
that, as far as being butch or feminine, I think that's more of a personality thing. But I think little girls that like sports and tomboyish and the tools, I think you're well on your way to, if you're going to be same sex attracted, you're well on your way to being more toward the butchy side. I never used to call myself butch either, by the way.
Oh, really?
It was just wasn't, that I can recall, that wasn't a thing. Or if I we did, I remember sitting with a couple of other lesbians, we would like parody, we were like really butch women, and it was just between us, but we'd have laughs, stomping around and deepening our voices, just shits and giggles, but
But it's
stereo.
not. Yeah. I guess I've always been curious about this just because, I don't know. It's weird because I feel like there's some innateness there. I don't know what it
I think
is,
there,
but
I think there's a tendency that, I hate to say that being butch is like an inborn thing because I don't know that it is.
no, I don't either. Like, all I can go off is like my own experience of basically being told since I was very small that I was behaving like a boy.
Yes,
You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. And I was jealous. I have a picture of my cousins in my grandfather's basement, and he's like, yeah, buzz cutting the boys. I was jealous of that because I had long hair down my back, the moms taking care of the long girls' long hair. And I was so jealous of the kind of freedoms boys had. I was jealous of boys. They got more attention in class. They were clearly, obviously, more favored in families. Now, I have three sisters. So I guess in a way, I was kind of like the tomboy of the family. My dad was a Christian saint. He never, ever expressed that he was disappointed that he didn't have a son. I think they probably tried, but we were never ever taught that we were less than in our family.
Did your
So,
dad let you, did your parents let you dress how you wanted
oh
to,
my
or?
God. Well, to an extent, I was a little girl, so you had to wear shorts and this and that. And then when you go to school, you had a dress code.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I had a dress code till I was in high school. You had to wear skirts.
Jesus.
Seriously, in the 70s. But my parents really indulged me with footballs, baseballs, toolboxes, go-karts. My dad took my bike and put a banana seat and the butterfly handlebars back when that was a thing. That was a thing back in the 60s,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They let me dig in the garden, let me mow the lawn.
So you never really, considered yourself butch before. Do you kind of now? Did a shift happen somewhere?
I'm more comfortable with saying butch because like back in the 70s and 80s, I thought butch was kind of like kind of implying that you're parodying men,
Mm.
right? And I was really kind of dykey. I don't know that I would have, even though I probably was really butch, but there was women that were like much more butch presenting than me. And maybe
Yeah, I know.
they probably knew I was a baby butch. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a fine line there sometimes. But it's so much of the ideas that which is a performance only is I'm like, no, it's not a performance necessarily. I didn't
No, I
choose
never
I didn't
spend 180.
consciously choose the clothes to like or hair to like. Like I just like
Yeah, I
it this
never
way.
consciously say, "Oh, this looks." Oh, I wear the clothes I like that I'm comfortable in.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like more, and it took a lot of years to. Like, you got to remember, I'm like up there in my 60s, so it took a lot of years to become comfortable in my body, and it's paid off well in this last year, obviously, with all the trials I'm going through. But to really learn to love and cherish this body. And I want like another 15, I need another good 15 years. That's that's my goal, is to get a good 15 years.
Yeah. The reason I'd like to talk about the quote unquote butch experience, if you want to call it that, or maybe just the lesbian experience of being a kid and growing up, is it because it's such a common story? And I mean, now it's used to say kids are trans, but it's like this is a common lesbian story. This is a common story of women who grow up and get categorized as butch.
Yeah.
The
Well, I
tomboy, the
think
liking this, the liking that, even gender dysphoria could be very common for us.
well, I think given the times, I think gender dysphoria would have been a very common term for a lot of women
Yeah, yeah,
back in my day.
yeah.
But that's because of the attitudes of society towards women who aren't conforming. And I think you internalize that. And God knows women are given umpteen million reasons to hate their bodies and hate themselves. So here's one more because you might be same-sex attracted or you are same-sex attracted and just not accepting it. So you can imagine like the internal conflicts that happen for young lesbians, and I don't think I doubt a lot of that's even changed.
Sadly, it doesn't seem like it's changed as much as we would have hoped it
It's
changed.
it's it's just morphed into this other type of homophobia where if you like girls, then you must be a boy.
Yeah,
What the hell?
it's almost gotten more serious,
It
because now you're medicalizing it.
that's the worst thing. If it was just some crazy philosophy, we could probably just laugh our asses off. But here we've got people who are actually trying to alter their bodies to fit this, and it has been so handily monetized, which it's a total scandal.
Yeah.
It's a scandal. And I'm like, love your bodies, love yourselves. It's and it, you know it does sometimes it takes a lot of years a lot of years to do that.
You say it took you a lot of years.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it's hard to say exactly. That's a tough question. I hated my body for so many reasons. But as time goes on, you realize like, your body is encompassing your whole self. It's your life support for your mind and your everything else that you I mean, some people don't believe in souls, some do. Some believe in an afterlife and some don't. But even if it's just the here and now, your body is what sustains you. And like, I just have had to learn not to abuse my body with booze. That's just come in the last couple of years, really. I don't
Mhm.
really have never considered myself an alcoholic, but I definitely have abused myself with alcohol.
We
And
abuse ourselves in so many different ways,
so
right?
it's almost vast.
Yeah.
The different ways in which we can sabotage ourselves from being, finding our better selves in there.
For me, just kind of like radical acceptance has been very helpful of just, accepting what is and not fantasizing or trying to change what can't be changed.
And it's weird, but I mean, I think I've kind of gone through some of that in this last year myself with breast cancer. It's like I I remember driving to work one morning, and it had to be like the month after I realized I had a lump in my breast, and I had mammography, and I was already going to get a sonogram. So I knew I was on my way. And I had like a brief little cry, like maybe a minute and a half or something. And then I just kind of bucked up and I just accepted everything that was happening to me. And it's been really helpful not to be able to accept it and not act out to the family or my healthcare providers who are there. They got their own stresses and they're going to try and help you. So don't give them attitude, or try and go in with a good attitude with the right questions, and they will help you. They will go out of their way to help you. And some of those are hard lessons because I haven't always been able to pull that off as well.
Have you like to control things too?
Well, some things you just have to learn to let happen to you.
I don't know. I think that's such the
The only
human
thing you can
fight,
really
right?
own, the only thing you can really own is your own actions, your own words and your own actions. You can't you can't own every single thing that's going to happen to you,
Yeah.
but how you react, and like it's been a really big part of like loving myself as a lesbian.
Hmm.
And hopefully being older can maybe shine a little light for the youngsters, because women did that for me.
Yeah.
Older women did that for me in their own way.
What do you feel like you want to say to the younger lesbians when you see them acting out and doing these things like removing their breasts and identifying as non-binary and
Well, removing your breasts is like a massive acting out.
yeah.
I mean, I totally regret for any woman that's doing that or contemplating doing that. But it's some of this is that social contagion that I realize is like a big giant tidal wave, and
Yeah.
until that wave recedes and we take a look at the wreckage, there isn't a lot that I myself can do, except
I
maybe
think
like you and I, we're living our lives as examples
yeah.
of how we can live a more healthy life and accept ourselves and be who we are, and it's not dependent on any philosophy, because like I know so many lesbians with so many different ideas, religions. I mean, some of it's the variety in the lesbian world is amazing.
It's definitely one thing that I think we struggle with too, is to accept difference. We tend to be cliquey. Humans in general, right? It's
Yeah.
just one of those things.
And unfortunately, like if you have your small friend group of 3 or 4 friends, and then you agree to let in a few more friends, and the next thing you know, you've got a dance party with 200 women, you will find women with whom you and believe me, lesbians can fight like nobody's business. I you know, but we also took care of each other too. When family members would die or when we'd move. I had a truck. I was the most popular lesbian around because
Yeah.
lesbians always U-hauling. So it was like my truck was in use at least once a month forever, helping lesbians move in, move out, move around. The U-Haul syndrome.
Right.
Sometimes it was me. Move.
Yeah. What do you love about being a lesbian? What's your lesbian joy?
Surreptitiously looking at women.
Okay, explain that a little bit more.
I love women's bodies. I mean, I just love the way like a woman's skirt swishes. There was just something about that when I was a child and I saw my aunt taking care of something and I was like, wow, is that the most beautiful thing? Just so like I like to watch women. Um Obviously, I'm somewhat outspoken on X. I'm going to be consistent from now till the end of time. No man is a lesbian. There's no such thing as a lesbian with a penis. I mean, it's the freaking obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And until
Definitely say the thing I love about being a lesbian is not having to deal with men.
Yeah, well, that I was going to say that, but I don't base my lesbian around my being a lesbian around anything to do with men. So I guess if we were to,
Yeah, that's true.
I didn't want to define myself by saying not men, but let's just say define myself by being I am like so woman centered, and it's been wonderful and amazing. And it's not that there aren't men in my life that I love. I love my dad. I have nephews, brothers-in-law. Have worked in a completely male dominated trade and profession my entire life, just about working life. So I can get along with men okay. But it's been nice having known my grandmother, mom, aunts, girl cousins, sisters. So like moving into lesbian community was like it felt really comfortable to me. And there's a nurturing there. They Some of those women really did look after me in ways that only now I can look back and understand.
Mm-hmm.
Almost forgot. I went to Dyke Days LA this summer,
Oh,
and
that's right. Yeah.
they had me as a marked woman because I remember someone yelling, "There she is!" I know they were talking about me. And then I had my lesbian pride banner up, and they were on the podium talking about, and there's the bigots. And I know they were just dying to find some excuse to kick me out of there.
Who was saying there's the bigots?
Someone on the stage with a microphone.
Really?
Seriously.
Holy shit.
Yeah, they're totally colonized by men. What are you going to do?
And this was a dyke gathering? Like a LA's version of Dyke March?
It's a major annual gathering in a park. It's like 3,000 women there. It's amazing. And I think
Did
I'm pretty sure I was in line right behind Buck Angel in the merchandise line. I'm pretty sure that's who it was.
See, that's why I could never go to one of those things.
I just said nothing. I said like I just put up my lesbian pride banner. Apparently is too turfy for them.
Yeah. Did you get some looks? Anybody come up and say anything to you?
I had a t-shirt that said lesbian not queer in fluorescent this time. And I
Ooh.
put my Twitter handle on it. But I thought better of it because I set up by myself. I came by myself, and I thought better of it and go, Gay, you're by yourself this time.
Yeah.
Better cool it. So I changed my T-shirt to something to XXXY Athletics, which is much more subtle,
Mm-hmm.
and just sat and had some tacos, and some friends showed up who were also TERFs. So we had the TERF territory there. But they were just dying to find some reason to kick me out, and they never had one. They tried to kick me
Yeah.
out last year for my T-shirt, lesbian, not queer. And I'm like, that's my identity.
Wait, so last year you
Yeah,
got kicked out?
they wanted me to take my shirt off or leave the gathering, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing either one. I'll leave when I'm ready.
Really?
Oh, your T-shirts making people feel unsafe. I said, what?
Unsafe.
Oh, I said nothing to anyone about their identity. This is my identity, but you can't have your own identity because your identity clashes with their identity, and somehow that magic identity button is their identity is more important than my identity.
Yeah, I mean, it really does come down to that, right? I feel unsafe, but my unsafe feelings don't matter.
Yeah, and here's all these admins over there huddling around trying to figure out how to get me to take my T-shirt off.
God, these people, man, they have no resilience, no backbone. People will disagree with you. People will have their own ideas about the world and life. Like what happened to the seriously live and let live? Like that's what that pretty much means. Is
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can engulf the same area and like not and be okay
yeah.
with the person you disagree with.
Not only is it not a statement that was a blanket statement for everyone, like lesbians aren't queer or lesbians don't have penises or something that I was a little more out there. It was just lesbian, not queer. That's me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not acceptable in a purportedly gathering of dykes, which is, of course, dyke is a word that is acceptable for men, non-binary people, anybody who wants that term, kind of like lesbian. Everybody wants to grab a hold of something. Well, I'm still in the old school where words mean things. And for me,
Well,
dyke is kind of an inside word that
oh yeah, absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Like I call myself a dyke. We're dykes, but
I don't either, and I would never call another woman that unless we were on I understood that she was okay with it.
yeah, if we're all on the
You know what
same
I mean?
team, is
Yeah.
like, hey, what do you think? Is she a dyke? Yeah, probably. But no, that's not a word I just throw out there ever.
Yeah. It's all everybody using lesbian and dyke and stuff like that. They aren't. And all the actual lesbians and dykes don't want anything to do with those words. They run from it screaming.
Well, that's why I want to work actively at reclaiming lesbian as a female homosexual. Nothing more, nothing less. We're not a civil rights cause. We're not whatever. It's
Mm-hmm.
simply that a female homosexual person.
Is there anything you would like to talk about or say before we kind of sum up?
Keep the faith. Um, we're not going to solve a lot online. I think it's good that we keep our presence and our opinions out there, but the personal is political. So carefully cast around for some women around you. You may find them in an unlikely place. And yeah, I mean, I see couples all the time. No, I don't walk up to them and say, "Oh, are you lesbians?" But there may be a time and a place, like at a pride gathering or something, and you don't have to immediately launch into, you know, what about this gender thing, but
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of feel women out.
Mm-hmm.
I I can't imagine lesbians that would trans their own children though.
They do.
I know, and it's it's social contagion.
I know. No, it's kind of a cancer on everything right now.
It is, and I don't think that the things that I had we could ever go back to just because of this gender BS. There's always going to be somebody in there throwing a monkey wrench into the pile.
Well, in a way, that is life. You can't. There's never going back. Once you go forward, that's all the direction we go. At least in this life, we
Right.
go forward.
Right.
It's been great talking with you, Gay. Thank you
I
for.
hope you can make sense of all this.
Oh, it was good. It was good. No, I appreciate you talking with me. Um, I think you have a wealth of knowledge, and I always like to bring lesbians on of all kinds of different ages and backgrounds because I think that's how we learn, right? It's always something to learn from another woman.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hopefully I can learn some things from the youngsters too.
Yeah, I have. Absolutely. I have learned things from women who were 20 years old that I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe like she just dropped a bomb on me." And I'm like 20 years older than her, you know? It's magic happens when women come together and talk.
Right. Another thing I don't actively run out and say, I'm a feminist this, I'm a feminist that. But obviously, being a lesbian and being in what I would have considered lesbian community, it's kind of like Maya Angelou. I mean, I've been a woman my entire life, and I've been a lesbian, same-sex attracted woman. Why would I not be on my own side? Right?
I know. Yeah, if I think if you embrace yourself as you are, as a woman and a lesbian, that you are a feminist almost just because. I mean, you're going to want to look after your own people and your own self and your own interests, and how they pertain in the world. And you're ignorant if you don't see there's a difference happening.
Totally. I have so enjoyed this. I didn't know really how, what form or shape this conversation was going to take, but it's been really good to kind of scroll back through the memory bank and kind of make some sense and maybe give some nuggets of useful information that other women could take.
Absolutely.